Welcome to the Game On Podcast. Tonight, Adelaide. Crows were ruthless, but a few surprises thrown up by Matty Nix. But Adelaide put Carlton to the sword impressively at the Adelaide Oval. And Australia lucky to get away with a win in the first test against the West Indies. We'll talk about that in some depth a little bit later on. All right, let's do this. Welcome to the Game On Podcast. My name's Pete once again, joined in the studio here with Malcolm. Malcolm, how's your week been?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Not too bad. Couple of things coming up involved. Going to be interviewing Gillan McLaughlin at a lunch, so looking forward to that.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Really looking forward to that. Where's that being held at? Just for everybody out there?
Well, it's actually already sold out.
Yep.
It's the General Havelock with Adelaide Uni. So, yeah.
Should be a bit fun. How did uni go on the weekend?
No, they got the silver medal.
Right.
Yeah,
Not the bronze, not the gold.
No.
They got the
They
silver.
might have got bronze, actually.
Yep.
That's not a bad point.
Yeah, I did see a couple of results that didn't quite go their way on the weekend. So, very, very interesting. We've got a few things coming up a little bit later, but let's get into Around the Grounds.
Around the Grounds.
All right, coming up a little bit later, we've got some SANFL football. We'll talk, obviously, the cricket in a bit more depth. And the netball yo-yo season continues for the Thunderbirds, which has been unbelievable. But first, mate, we better kick off with the AFL. Let's start off with just breaking that we've just found out that Tom Lynch has been given 5 games for his contact on Jordan Butts. Your thoughts on it, mate? Let's open up Pandora's box right from the get-go.
Personally, think he's pretty lucky to only get 5. He was lucky not to get reported for a couple other times as well.
Yes.
There was a strike behind the play. You could have argued also unduly rough play where he trod on Worrell. So I think he was lucky there. Mm-hmm. And look, I'll start right from the top, right on this. Yet again, piss week by Richmond. I'm sorry, where was Adam Eze and the Richmond coaching panel in general to not recognise it in the game, get him off the ground? And now this absolute crap, and all clubs are guilty of this, the interchange rotations were written out during the week. Pete, you and I can write that on a piece of paper now.
Yes.
You know, I was pissed off with Nord a couple of weeks ago that you've got
this was against Sturt.
Yeah, yep. Jackson Callow, who is their only forward, is off.
Yep.
And Jack Hurd, their best defender, off at the same time. If you're going to organise something on a bloody piece of paper, surely you can be better than that. Yep. And just, it was just crazy. So the bit there, that'd stuff up our rotations if we take him off there. You've got 8 million coaches at AFL level. You can rearrange that in 5 minutes. All it does is mean the next guy stays on for a couple more minutes, as it is. It's not that bloody hard. And
you've got to be able to recognise when things are bubbling like they were.
Actually, coach.
Yeah.
In other words, there's so many games now where there's no real coaching. It's all done in the week. Well, as I said, any of us can write on a piece of paper. It's bullshit.
Do you think the coaches have got their heads stuck in the laptops a little bit too much?
Massively.
A little bit too much?
Massively. At all levels.
Yep.
Instead of actually watching, recognising things, the signs. It was written on dog's balls to get him off the ground. Yep. And most clubs have got team rules, and if you give away a 50 or 2 50s, 3 free kicks in 5, whatever.
Yes.
The player's off anyway. Yep. He'd done that. He gave away 5 free kicks. He'd lost he was the Crows' best player for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I think his champion data stats points were at -15.
Yeah.
So that's not even helping. So my question there is that Adam Eze has come out and obviously said that, you know, he's a mentor. He's got to stay out on the ground to help those young guys. But you're really sending the wrong message, aren't you?
Yet again, like he defended. You can say, it gets boring. You're going on about Richmond, whatever. We saw the bit with Bolter. Now, okay, we don't know what he was saying internally. It may be totally different.
Yep.
But still publicly, it's atrocious what he said. We've had that. And terrible by Richmond. And then, again, with this, how about Uzo just go straight after the game? I stuffed up by not taking him off.
Yep.
Tom stuffed up, no defence.
Yep.
The bit His first comment was, "Oh, we're going to have to go through and contact the AFL on where we thought were free kicks for him."
Doesn't matter.
The
He's
TV,
still belted somewhere.
yeah, it's irrelevant. And ironically, the footy shows have gone and done that, and they've gone, "Adam, for goodness sake, there was nothing there whatsoever. That's crap."
Yep.
And again tonight, Richmond have argued that it shouldn't have been severe impact. How about taking some responsibility? And all clubs are guilty of this at the tribunal.
Yep.
I hate the bullshit at tribunal. He was blatantly guilty. He should have gone in there, pleaded guilty. Everyone should have been at the bar in 5 minutes. It's gone for over 2.5 hours.
Do you think that Richmond were trying to soften the blow right from the get-go with the press conference afterwards? I actually was under the understanding that you are not allowed to make comment on these things. There's a few coaches that will steer clear of it, but Uze sort of put himself right in the middle of it, didn't he?
It's just straight away. It's just been incredulous, the stupidity. I think 5's still light, as I said, for that. And to argue, he can't close his fist. Well, the AFL then just got 2 still photos of him spoiling with a closed fist. Yes, one of his fingers is stuck out a little bit because, of that. Jeez, but it's just crap. And it's time. I would love, and this is where I'd love the whole system be, right, if you bullshit and all that, we're going to give you an extra couple instead of this crap.
Yep. Do you think the tribunal needs that overhaul with those gradings to be a little bit more...
As Lee Matthews says, you've got to get back in the middle grading.
Yes.
And so at least with this one, he went, right, stuff the gradings. I'm just sending it straight to the tribunal. And I'm glad. I thought they should have asked for 6 or 7.
Yep.
And then let it argue. Not because at one stage it looked like Richmond were going to get it reduced to 3 or 4. So thank goodness it's come out with 5 at least.
Absolutely.
But it's just pathetic behaviour. I'm just sick of it by clubs. It's ridiculous.
We haven't seen anything since, say, the Barry Hall Staker one, which obviously is the one that comes to mind where he flushes him. If he'd got Butts or Worrell on separate occasions there, he really could have put him into next week, couldn't he?
Oh, exactly. And to try and say afterwards it's not severe, it's just pathetic. It's disgraceful.
Where do you see Tom Lynch's career at right now? Does he stick fat with Richmond? Do they see this frustration as obviously the wins and the losses obviously compound that a little bit, or have teams sort of worked him out a little bit and maybe a change is good?
I think it's more the body. Let's also remember his body hasn't come up for much footy in the last couple of years. And as Kane Corns rightly put it, he's lost. He can't take off and beat an opponent with pace now. So it's all just a jostle.
Yep.
Yeah, Father Time's caught up. Now, I get it with Richmond with their side because they've got nothing else. They've just got kids.
Yep.
They need him in that way. But, well, he's not leading with the crap from the weekend.
Yep.
Now, okay, you can say this is far-fetched, but I'm sorry, society in general, more and more kids in split marriages, the mum is the one who decides what sport little Johnny's playing. And trust me, that it's more and more. What in the hell would the AFL do if a parent came out and said, we're not allowing our son to go to Richmond? Now, it'd be bloody hard to say, oh, you're tampering with the draft and that.
But don't we already sort of see that a little bit, though, with players having preferences? Maybe your top 5, maybe not. I get that. But after that, do you think clubs get a bit of a sense of players that do want to go to their club or don't want to go to their club?
A little bit, but most clubs will still take the gamble and think that they'll convince a guy to
bring
come
him
around
into the circle.
Come around to your club and your science. Look, Adelaide stuffed up massively with, he left Adelaide, and the defender. I'll look that up in a minute. Of their draft tour, and they should have recognised that a few years ago. That was really poor. With not to recognise the mental side of it. Beforehand.
Mackesy.
Yes, with Mackesy.
Fisher Mackesy. Yep.
And that was a huge. That was a massive stuff up.
Yep.
Angelucci as well, where Don Pike overall because he wanted the midfielder when Adelaide would have taken Tim English. So you just see how decisions have such big
Well, and then you look at, if you want to look at, and it segues very nicely into something that I did want to talk about a little bit later on, but we'll do it now, is that it segues into Harley Reid because, where is he at? Does he need some stability for him to get his career going? Because at the moment,
stagnated a bit.
Where do you see him compared to other number one picks? I mean, let's go back. You got Horn Francis, all right. Was okay at North Melbourne, but sort of has found his feet at Port Adelaide, which is where he sort of wanted to be.
Yep.
And home, that's right. Matty Rowell took a little while to get going, but now seems to have found his feet.
So much his footy, that was injuries. Let's remember, he got 9 Brownlow votes in his first 3 games.
Yep.
So that wasn't him or whatever. That was his body let him down. So I think that's a little bit different.
Harry Sheasel?
Yeah, that's probably the body a bit as well. Mm-hmm. It's an adjustment to go there. It's like,
whereas Reid looks like he's got the body to play, but just hasn't got the team around him.
Yeah,
to support
the team
him.
and the maturity, and it's also you're being put in as number 1 into the worst side.
Yes.
So it is harder as well.
Yep.
In some regards, it's easier for the number 8 or 9 who's going to a reasonable side.
Yep.
And especially at the moment, the gap's pretty big to those last couple.
I mean, Harry Sheasel was in the same boat with North Melbourne when he went there. Now, he went into the middle. They've tried him at half forward. They've tried him at half back. Is it just a matter of finding a place for him to settle down in?
Yeah, and it's also because they've had so many draft choices who are generally all midfielders.
Yeah. They're blessed, aren't they?
Yeah, yes, but it's also then trying to find which ones then fit the most, who can play somewhere else. So, he's probably never played halfback flank, and he's probably never seen a halfback flank at junior level.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden that's where
he's
he's
it the Hodgie
playing
role?
at AFL level. A little bit, but then...
Are you sacrificing a little bit too much, though?
You got to remember also, Hodges' football IQ was always very high.
Well, Harry Sheasel, from what I've heard and seen about the place, is up there.
I think he's pretty reasonable.
But I think, Harley Reid's a whole different kettle of fish. I think he could be the bursting, bust-out player like Patrick Dangerfield was, or still is, really.
Yeah.
But was as a junior for Adelaide, or Horn Francis, exactly right. Is that just a matter of settling him down and going, hey, this is the program, this is what we want you to do, and just do it?
Yes, but also it is harder.
I agree.
WA is so bloody far away as well, so it's not like,
Yep.
So you don't have any contact with mates so much.
But then that's up to the club. That's up to the club, though.
It is.
I think Adelaide have recognised that in, I think Rory Sloane's pointed out that, the club got his mates over rather than him going over to there. So that's something that West Coast, especially money-wise, they're sitting pretty with that kind of stuff. They could probably afford a few extra flights.
Yeah.
Anyway, very interesting that Tom Lynch has got 5 games there and obviously some sanctions along the way. All right, let's talk Port Adelaide. First up last Thursday night. Very impressive against a lacklustre Carlton.
I think that's more the second part. It was more... Port were okay, but just how poor Carlton were. And it
was hard for me to watch, I can tell you right now.
It looks totally dispirited. Yep. It looks... They're on their end-of-season footy trip. And...
Well, I mean, they lose to North Melbourne the week before. You would have expected a response, and yet they just got walked all over.
Yeah, and it was just the lack of physicality again, the lack of just having a dip. Like, no problem with losing, but at least come out...
Well, what was it?
With some fight.
10 goals to 6 individual points.
Yeah, but there was just no fight.
Yep.
They look disinterested.
So is that a structure point of view? Is that a coaching point of view? Has Voss lost the players? Have the players lost faith in themselves?
Probably a bit of all of it, I admit. That's the first time where I've gone, no, I reckon Voss
is in trouble.
That's like even against North Melbourne. I thought, no, look, if the players have stuffed that up.
Yep.
But that's the first time where I watched Carlton and thought, nah, the players they've checked out here.
Yep.
And you can't change 40 players over.
No,
that's the reality of the situation. And there was no buy-in whatsoever. And
I mean, Georgiades stepping around defenders like they were witches'
gnomes,
hats.
Yeah.
Which was just crazy.
They look like the gnomes out of Harry Potter.
Yep.
Yeah. And it really looked like there's been no buy-in. And I heard Voss once before where he said we're number one in contested possessions.
Are they looking at all the wrong metrics?
Yeah, and I'm sitting there thinking, Vossi, when you haven't got an elite kick, there's not one elite kick at Carlton.
Yep. For
mine. There's some reasonable, and then there's some shit house.
Yeah. Oh.
So, it's reasonable to terrible.
Yep. Is that why their difference between their best and their worst is so great?
Well, I think you sit there and you go, it's not fitness. Yeah, they all get hammered and rah, but I think because of the game style they're playing, crash, bash, the skills fall away that bit more.
Yep. Especially late in the game.
So I'm saying it's more.
And that has been the trend for Carlton. They've started off brilliantly. Yeah. They've been able to deliver, almost a 1-2 knockout punch. And then as the game's gone on, they've fallen away. So there's some worrying signs there. Do Carlton keep Voss and move on assistant coaches? Do they start again with the coaching panel and bring somebody new in with their own team?
It's going to be interesting. Graham Wright's known for change.
Well, and he's coming in early now.
Yeah.
And that's probably a concern for Voss.
Yeah, you would. Yeah. I don't think you can plan for superannuation.
No. I know they keep saying he's got one more year to go in the contract, but that's just, it is what it is. He has got one more year, but they can pay that out. Exactly right. Let's stick with Carlton before we move on to Port Adelaide. What did you think of the graffiti on the Carlton club rooms or Carlton Oval there? It's a throwback to a bygone era where...
Yeah, the old manure at Richmond, etc.
And the Crows, I think, and Hinkley, obviously...
Yeah, Hinkley one's pretty boring. That's become
a weekly thing.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, mate? Do you like the fact that fans are venting their frustration in this way?
I think now I'm older, I go, nah. Well, years ago, I thought it was funny as a kid. You're younger, you're more stupid. And yeah, that's funny. Where now I just go, nah, that's crap.
Yep.
Doesn't achieve anything. Yep. All it means, you're paying some person the next morning to come and clean it off. Yep. It's on the news for 5 minutes. Yeah.
It's a hard one to swallow for Carlton supporters, and like I said, I couldn't watch it at various stages. That's the problem.
You sit there and go, and so it's not Carlton so much here, but any club. Say Carlton lose their last 8 from here. Well, they're actually better off to sack Voss and pay that out.
Yes.
Because you're going to lose 20,000 members if you don't.
Yep. And we've seen it with Hinkley, obviously, here at a local level as well. They
never lost as many as they said they were going to Port. Yeah.
Yep. And that's love of the jumper, really, when it gets down to it. And that's what we've got to remember, that it's, players and coaches are custodians for a short period of time. The jumper's been there for 100 years, 150 years, however long it's been. Let's talk Port Adelaide. Let's give them a bit of a rev up. I thought they started off the game very, very well, and I think they've got that balance between Rosie, Butters, Horne-Francis and Bergman, who we will talk about in a minute. Yep. They've got that balance right, and now it's allowed Georgiades to just find his feet a little bit. And the difference between the week before and last week was the amount of balls that were coming in that just gave him that extra look.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting where they pick the coaches this week. I think you'll probably have one more in the SANFL, I would fancy, because they won pretty easy as well.
Yep.
Pretty tough thing, take him up to Brisbane for your first game.
Yep.
So
a bit of man management?
I would hope so.
Because from what I heard from Port Adelaide, Hamish Hartlett was saying that his first half was a bit scratchy, which you understand. He hasn't played a lot of football. But his second half, he started to find it, even though it didn't help Port Adelaide get over the line in the SANFL, because South Adelaide ended up with the chocolates on this occasion. Yeah. But what were your thoughts on Kenny sitting at the back of the coach's box?
Interesting.
It was interesting, wasn't it?
Interesting. I think I'm probably over the bit the whole time about him, and I had no problem with it. I think that they've been working together for years anyway. And look,
is it just a case of him looking at it from a different point of view and saying, look, you do your thing, I'll jump in when I need to jump in?
Possibly, and look, he also may have said, hang on, I've been on the boundary line for so long, didn't work last week,
Yep.
I might try up in the box this week. So we might be reading too much into it.
Absolutely.
So,
Well, what are your thoughts on the coaches coaching from the boundary line versus the box?
I'm a box fan. I want to see
You want
the whole season.
360.
60, big time.
Yep.
Big time. I want to be able to see, off the ball.
So is that where your senior assistant coach should be down on the bench relaying some of those messages, or
I don't reckon it.
Or does it depend on where you are in your development as a club?
A little bit, but there may be one person who's very, very good at that.
Yep.
Now, I know Paul Rosonico is very highly regarded at Port Adelaide for his stuff on the bench and his relationship with the players. And Riz is a character, bloody lunatic, quite very funny bloke.
Yep.
Lunatic in a good way.
Good way, yeah. No.
And so, that might be fine. And, I know Mark Robinson was very good at purveying things to the Nord players, but he'd do it very quietly and not officially or anything.
Yep.
And all that. And that's probably being a little bit unfair to Robbo. He was probably a better way would put it, he was extremely well organised.
Yep. And is that the difference between players of today and players of yesteryear, that you could give a little bit of an old-fashioned bake, whereas these days you've just got to pick the right person to go to and then
you do have
cuddle the right person as well?
You do have to pick the right player if you're going to give a bake.
Yep.
Like, I'm sure Nathan Bassett was known for giving as good a bakes as anyone.
Yes.
And I don't believe it was a fluke that Dean Turlich copped one day that I think he thought Dean could cop it.
Yep.
I don't think that was I think Bass was more calculated than that. And Blighty was known for that as well.
Absolutely.
Don't dare think that David Pittman one was off the top of the head.
No.
But nowadays it's not so much the blast; it's more you've got to get the buy-in with them. So it's got to have X, Y, and Z. Now, why do you want to do that?
Yep.
Okay, well, so it's got to be explained thoroughly, and then it's the buy-in.
So it's a collaboration rather than a dictatorship almost.
So it's totally different in that regard.
I know we're talking Port Adelaide, but let's just talk back to Carlton.
That's everyone.
Carlton a minute. Is that Carlton in the week before against North Melbourne, Vossi eyeballs basically a second-year player, third-year player, and lets his spray go on him when he really should have been going a little bit harder at some of the more established players.
Depends in that whether he's broken 3 or 4 team rules.
Yep.
So you just don't know. It's like when Lyon blasted Garcia early in the end, and you had people, Kate McCarthy came out of that, and I'm thinking, Kate, don't go beyond your footy knowledge levels here. You're pushing it, like you're getting called AFL expert, which I've got a bit of a problem with in that way. And so we just don't know. You know, I got no problem if he's broken this, and this. Then I got no problem with that.
Yep. But he may not have taken it the right way, and the rest of the team may not have taken it the right way. We don't know. We're not in the insane. Let's move back to Port Adelaide. Port Adelaide were very impressive. We'll give them that. But it looks like Miles Bergen will sign for the club for an additional couple of years. It looks like initially at the moment.
And I think Wanganeen Malira will still do the same, and that then gets them through to free agency. It's not only the end of free agency, Tasmania coming in. It's going to be.
Yep. Well, we'll talk about Tasmania again in a little bit. Now that they've looked like they've secured Bergman and looks like Malira's off the table, Butters, do we think he's going to stay for one more year, or will he maybe extend for a couple more?
He might, but I think he'll just stay the one at the moment. I think he might.
He wants to see what the transition is.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah.
Because he's a huge Hinkley fan.
Yes.
So let's just wait and see.
Yep. Understandable. Obviously, is that something that Josh Carr can build around, knowing that obviously he's got Bergman now hanging about, he's got Butters for at least one more year?
Well, it makes pre-season a hell of a lot easier. Yep. And if you'd lost, you meant him next year that he's lost those two. So if he'd lost Butters and Bergman for next year, hadn't picked up any senior gun recruit.
Yep.
You've just got all draft choices. It's effectively rebuild time.
Yep.
Where at least having the big four, so instead of the big three, include Bergman now for the big four. At least you've got something to plan for.
Yep.
Apparently, again, take it with a grain of salt. Mm-hmm. Marshall's meant to have put on so many kilos, a bit like Thilthorpe. Again, let's wait and see. But if that's true, that was Marshall's weakness. Now, everything else, his football brain and all that is elite.
Yes, but he's only one concussion away from being medically retired. Really,
so that's also a worry as well.
But Port's deficiency is still down back.
Yeah, I think so. Even though Rhoda Galaire's been good,
Well, he's had a purple patch for 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah.
That's not a season.
No, and he's just as likely to then have a couple of stinkers. And same thing with Zerk Thatcher, the gap between his good and his bad.
Yep.
And that's no sheer coincidence why they're at their second club, etc. So
It's
I still think it's a question
It's
mark.
definitely a worry. Port Adelaide obviously getting the chocolates there over Carlton. All right, let's move on to Adelaide. Adelaide were ruthless on field, but were they ruthless off field enough for your liking, mate, in selection?
Oh,
I do.
Murphy, etc. But I can't be bothered commenting on that anymore. I would have rather had Draper play or Jones or whatever.
Well, against a team you're expected to beat, let's be honest, they would have gone in quietly confident.
Yeah.
In previous years, maybe not in the last 2 or 3, but previous to that, they were expected to win these games, and these were the ones that they'd always slip up on.
Yeah.
So
and
from that point of view, I have to
it's
say
a big
they
tick.
were ruthless.
And let's, I very rarely praise Matthew Nicks tactically. To put Michael Annie on Vasselin was a good move. Now Matt's can play anywhere, and I mean anywhere.
Yep.
And he's elite. He's not average. He's way better than that.
Yep.
And
It's just that we haven't seen the best of him on the basis that he's generally locking somebody down, isn't he?
Yeah. And does that, and you just so highly regarded within football, and I think that's a big thing. And look, I've said it before, but I know for a fact, because I had it told by 3 Adelaide people, how impressed they were with him, with his attitude when he missed the selection in the Nords 2022 premiership side.
Well, hopefully he's got higher honours
but
coming
it's
up
just
soon.
his maturity in that way, and
What were your thoughts on some of the tactics? You've made mention there of Michael Annie, obviously swapping from half back to half forward and kicking a couple of sausage rolls, which absolutely fantastic for him. It does give another dimension to Adelaide's forward line in case a Walker or Thilthorpe or a Fogarty does get injured, or they want to rotate things around a little bit.
It's more a tactical thing that will put Max on the guy if they've got a good +1 or something like. Okay, he isn't supposedly height to play on say an Andrews, but his footy smarts he has.
Yep.
So
So is that the case?
Gives them something else to work with.
Could that be pre-planning a little bit for Collingwood in, say, Jeremy Howe? That
Possibly.
he could potentially shut down a Jeremy Howe. This is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
makes him accountable, but also is a good matchup.
Yeah, but then you need. I wouldn't be confident in anyone else standing Elliott, and he does his record on Elliott's very good.
Yep.
So
it's a bit like Charlie Cameron as well. So you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. Yeah. The second part of that tactic was to take Joshua Shelley off. Now, he didn't look a happy camper at the time. Is this sort of getting a bit of fire and brimstone in the belly to just fire him up for the last few games of the season? Or was it a case of, no, they made a call?
Yeah, it's his body. I'll believe Nick's on that one, that he said it was his body and all that. And no player wants to come off, and Josh probably shows he's got the shits a bit more than most.
Yep.
I've got no problem with that.
Nope.
I'll take Nick's on his word for that.
Okay.
If I discover anything else,
yep.
Go. Yeah, I'm happy.
So a little bit of team balance. They're already winning by plenty.
It's a like for a like in terms of him and Murphy.
And
you rest him ready for next week.
It is a marathon, not a sprint.
Oh, bloody
and
oath.
They've still got another 6 or 7 weeks or maybe longer to go. That's going to be an interesting watch. Dan Curtin obviously signing last week just after our episode there for an extra couple of years. He has become Mr. Versatility along with Maxi, hasn't he?
Well, it just gives you – he's just such a hard matchup on the wing as well, because he then gives you that extra defender floating back to intercept.
And he can go
he
forward.
Works the lines, kicks, and he's good. He's a very good athlete.
Yep.
Jeez, it's actually interesting. His brother's playing in their under-18 championships at the moment. He needs to lose some weight.
Right.
He's too bulky for his own good at the moment. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
Absolutely. Could Adelaide bring another brother to the club? Maybe.
I think, and I'm not the only one, I think his brother's probably dropped down a bit during these championships.
Fair enough.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
It will indeed.
We will talk about that because South Australia, very good.
We'll do that in the SANFL segment coming up. All right, top 4 up for grabs the next 4 to 6 weeks. we'll see where they're at and where they're made of and how much they progress. What are your thoughts on that?
I just still think it's a wait and see. At the moment, 9 doesn't go into 8. And the reality, the absolute just blatant reality is Collingwood's the only one who's safe.
Yes.
You've only got to have a bad 2 or 3 weeks, and you could still miss the 8. Brisbane is still no certainties, you know. So I'm not getting carried away on that. And let's also be honest. Adelaide have been ridiculously lucky with so few injuries. It showed when Rochelle got injured and when Murray got injured and then Crouch. Now they've probably, with Crouch, adapted that. Berry's doing that role. So they're okay there at the moment. But they're only 2 or 3 injuries away. Imagine if Thilthorpe got injured again.
Yep.
You know, so hold the phone.
Absolutely. No, I'm not suggesting that they're a guaranteed top 4, but their next 4 to 6 weeks is probably going to sort them out a little bit as to where we all think they're going to finish.
Yep.
And they've got, Melbourne this week's not an easy game, so we'll talk about
especially
that one
Pickett
as well.
gets
exactly.
Whatever. Yeah.
Exactly right. Let's talk about other matches. Sydney going down to the Western Bulldogs, somewhat understandable.
Yeah, but gee, Sydney's set shots is what crucial there. And look, Will Hayward missed a tackle in the third quarter. Now I'm a Will Hayward fan.
Yes, I do know that.
Yeah, coach himself says all that, but that was a lack of want on a tackle.
Yep.
In the third quarter, if he's got the right attitude, I'm going to mongrel this guy.
Yep.
And the guy got away, and they were 8 points up at that stage.
Yep.
The ball at the half-forward line. He should have, at the very least, forced the ball up or got the free kick for holding the ball. Burst through. They got a goal down. Bont set up Fraser, and away they went.
Just can't give Bont and the quality of that midfield any chance at all. I was going to talk about it in our AFL hot topics in a minute, but I'll talk about it now. The surface issues at the SCG. What are your thoughts there?
It was terrible.
Is that something that it came out last night that Port Adelaide 6 or 8 weeks ago made the comment to the AFL and nothing really has been done about it?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because you've got it. Both clubs. My understanding is both clubs inspect the surface and got to sign off.
Yep.
Well, then if something's brought up afterwards, you'd think, hang on, that's got a big thing for the next game. Now, I don't think it'll be a problem this week because the weather in Sydney, it's going to be a down. If the oval gets as much water anyway, it's just going to be a mud bit and just an old-fashioned battle. Yep. 5 goals to 4 or something like that. If the weather is as bad as they're saying at the moment. So that then, but yeah, it was where it was shifting so much, and I think we all thought Darcy.
Yes.
There wasn't a person watching that game didn't think, but it could have been anyone. Now, it's interesting where Western Bulldogs' record against the other top side so far, because if you go through it just on a matter of the best games to watch this year, they're probably in 4 of the 5.
Yeah.
The game here against Brisbane.
Yep.
The game against Geelong where they hit the post 6 times.
Yes.
The game against Collingwood. Then there was probably the West Hawthorn Gold Coast game on the Thursday night. So they've been in 3 of the best 4 or 5 games, and I watch them and I think, geez, they're good. Their midfield is just so deep. Fraser. I was going to say it last week. Fraser's got enough ability to be in the top 5 to 10 players in the comp.
And yet
in
he's
the next
sitting.
bit, So they're scary.
That's exactly
especially with Darcy just coming back, and he's only going to get better and better. So
they're going to be a tough team to handle once the dry conditions.
I think they're just super. And I keep thinking they're just going to have to. But I know Kane Corns goes on and on about their list, but. And I'm not quite as sold on in defence in that regard. No. I think there's some question marks there.
But their midfield and
forward, good luck.
Can get the job done. Gold Coast getting up over Melbourne by 19 points. That sort of, again, Melbourne just struggling to get
especially
anything.
The first quarter. Yeah. And, thought Gold Coast were going to win by 10 or 15 at that stage.
Yep.
And they fell away a bit again. So that would have been a bit hard. We would have been disappointed, but at least they got the W.
Exactly right, and that's very, very important. Hawthorn making an absolute mess of North Melbourne, which we sort of expected.
Yeah, not to that extent. I was disappointed with North Melbourne on the weekend.
North Melbourne had a good 6 to 8 weeks where they have been competitive.
Would have been more competitive.
Agreed. Collingwood, a bit of a surprise at one stage against West Coast, who took the game on, and good on them for trying something a little bit different. But just that class shines through in the end.
Yeah, I think they're in a bit of lull land at the moment. They're just doing what they have to do. You're 10 points clear on top.
Yep.
You can't just keep pushing guys each week. So.
Yep. Obviously, Adelaide getting up over Richmond, as we saw, and Freo just getting away from St Kilda late as well. But, what can you say about Freo? They are a team that could turn it on if they need to turn it on, but they just haven't quite got that mix right. What are your thoughts on the injury to Nat Fyfe? Is it pretty close to sort of saying, hey?
I think the fat lady's warming up her tonsils.
Yep.
But, they've got Hayden Young's due to come back in the next week or two. Jago O'Meara's played the last 2 games of Waffle.
Yep.
So I think he's going to struggle anyway. I reckon that might be it. And that's a sad way to go.
It is a sad way to go out, exactly. All right, mate, let's do some tips before we get into the AFL. Rest of the AFL hot topics. North Melbourne v the Bulldogs, Thursday night. Bulldogs for me. Carlton v Collingwood, Friday night. This should be a beauty. Collingwood for me. Hurts me to say that as a Carlton person, but if we're doing tips legitimately, I have to pick Collingwood. West Coast v the Giants over at Optus Stadium.
I'll go the Giants, but I'll give West Coast a chance, especially if Hogan doesn't come up. So, yeah. Giants
for me there in a close game, because if they play a bit like they played against Collingwood, I think that they're going to give the Giants a little bit of a trouble along the way. Essendon v the Suns. Geelong v Richmond. Geelong for me. Brisbane v Port Adelaide. Brisbane for me. St Kilda v Hawthorn at Marvel. Hawthorn for me. Sydney v Fremantle at the SCG.
For me, this is the only hard game to tip for the week. Yep. I'll go Fremantle, but I hope I'm wrong.
I reckon Sydney are going to get up on that one there, and Adelaide v Melbourne.
I'll go Adelaide.
All right, mate. Let's talk some rapid fire quick topics for the AFL wildcard weekend. Are you a fan of it or not? Because it looks like the top 9 are pretty much all settled, but it does give that bottom 9, because of the closeness of the competition, a chance to maybe play off in that wildcard weekend.
Yeah, I'm mixed on it. I'm a no if I'm on a vote.
Okay, done. I think it could be an interesting way of,
or at least one way it probably equalises the draw inadequacies up a bit.
A little bit, yep.
Yeah.
It does go
so
a little
in
bit
that way, I'm in favour.
That's what I was just about to say, is that it does equal things out a little bit. It gives 2 more games, and it gives an opportunity. You wouldn't want to play the Bulldogs, say, if they finish 9th, or Port Adelaide if they finish 10th in that first final, because, they only need to turn it on for 30 minutes, and they can do some damage there. Tasmania, we did get a little bit of a fly through. I don't know if you've seen the renderings of it. No. Looks pretty impressive. Are we going to see a team from Tasmania in 2028, or have the AFL going to walk away because it's not going to happen?
Don't know. Really don't know. I know.
Where does this leave teams?
I know a politician in Tasmania who's pretty heavily involved in this is very nervous.
Yep.
That he's not sure either way.
Okay. Where does it leave teams if they decide not to go with it? Because obviously they've done a lot of pre-planning around it, because we're not really thinking about what's happening this year and next year. It's 3-4 years in advance. Where does that leave those clubs? Do they have to come up with a plan B?
I think probably it'd be more relief. So you're trying to keep, say, a Riley Sanders, at Western Bulldogs. You're competing against Tasmania, against the Lure, playing the first ever side, all that sort of bit.
Yep.
Well, all of a sudden they might have that to compete against. So it may actually be easier.
Yep. So you don't think the AFL have gone too far down one track to be able to pull it back now?
Well, they're not known for ever admitting they were wrong and doing something else, are they? So
it's a bit of a worry when you think about it from that point of view. Let's talk umpires. Umpires contact. Increased penalties for players for accidental contact. Is this a fair call or not?
I think it's way overboard. I'm saying as an umpire, majority of the time when you got someone, you've actually read the game wrong and got the wrong spot. Now, there was one early in the year it was right in the last minute of the game with Bailey Smith and the umpire.
Yep.
The umpire stuffed up that, not Bailey Smith.
Is this a problem because we have the 4 umpires on the ground?
It's part of it. Their positioning, you know, my thoughts there.
I do, yep.
So, I just think it's going overboard. And look, majority of if a player runs through an umpire, shit you, throw the book at him.
Absolutely.
Give him life. But if it's just minor, get on with it, for goodness. I just think it's revenue raising.
Yep. Well, there's a bit of revenue raising going on tonight at the tribunal, but anyway, we can talk that. All right, mate, we better take a very, very quick break. Before we do that, congratulations to Dom Sheed, who's announced his retirement from the game. We've actually got a little package in our flashbacks coming up a little bit later there, but well done to Dom Sheed and the West Coast Eagles on honouring him. All right, coming up, we'll talk cricket. Australia, very lucky to get out with a win against the West Indies. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts on that, mate. And in the SANFL, VALE to Ian Day, and also Sturt, obviously, up the top of the ladder. And in the netball, another week, another survival for the Adelaide Thunderbirds.
You're listening to the Game On Podcast. We'll be right back after this short break.
A dents and scratches putting a dent in your day? Introducing Roger Steen Crash Repairs Adelaide, your trusted solution for automotive woes. With over 2 decades of expertise, Roger Steen Crash Repairs guarantees top-notch service, restoring your vehicle to its former glory in no time. From minor dings to major collisions, our skilled technicians handle it all with precision and care, using state-of-the-art equipment and techniques.
Roger Steen Crash Repairs saved my car. It looks brand new.
Fast, friendly and reliable. I wouldn't trust anyone else with my vehicle. Don't let accidents slow you down. Visit Roger Steen Crash Repairs Adelaide at 14 Penner Avenue, Glynde, for quality service you can count on. And here's a special offer just for our listeners. Mention this podcast and receive a $100 discount on your repair. Roger Steen Crash Repairs Adelaide. Excellence in every repair.
All right, mate, and as per usual, we thank our sponsors, Roger Steen Crash Repairs. All right, let's move on. Let's talk cricket. England v India first. In England, England don't mind chasing down a big total.
Yeah, it's interesting. Talking to some guys who played in England, Jeff Wilson, one of them, and guys, where they said if you get a warm weather in England, which it is now, how the wickets just become unbelievable to bat on. Mm-hmm. Now have a listen to some of these scores in English county cricket. Worcestershire 7 declared for 679.
Haven't seen any scores like that for a while.
Surrey 9 declared for 820.
Definitely haven't seen anything like that.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
You're looking at Kent 8 declared for 566.
That's a tough.
Middlesex 534.
That's tough.
So there's 4 games out of the where the scores are off the charts.
Yep.
Look, I was following the game in terms of Surrey making 9 for 820. Now,
tough day in the field for the bowlers.
They only batted for 161 overs.
Okay.
Dom Sibley with 305. Sam Curran batting 408. Dan Lawrence at 5, 178. Will Jacks at 6, 119.
Okay.
Now, that's just crazy. You know?
That's an unbelievable strike rate when you think about it.
Poor George Drisser, 1 for 247.
Ouch.
You know, you'd be trying to get those figures erased, wouldn't you?
Yes.
You know, and
you'd be hoping that the internet blows up and nobody ever sees that one again.
On the Worcestershire, I think it was Worcestershire. Yes. So Adam Jose played for the Strikers.
Yes.
266 off 253 balls.
Wow.
31 fours, 7 sixes. Now, you're batting above a run a ball.
In county cricket.
County cricket, first class game. Jake Libby was 228 not out opening.
Yep.
So, that's just crazy figures.
Is that a case of the wickets have just gone as hard as a road?
And the outfields. Look, they play on grounds not much bigger than this room, Pete, and they're grease light.
Yep.
So
like a lawn bowling green.
You push a ball and it's 4.
Yep. England obviously getting up there and winning by 5 wickets. It was an interesting chase, but certainly one that England was definitely up for.
Oh, look, we're following it here, the start of it. Said at the end, and said, I spoke to Jake a bit off air. You can still hear the conversation. And Jake's, England will get them.
Yep.
You know.
It's just unbelievable.
So,
All right, let's move over to the West Indies v Australia. That was an interesting result, mate, that I didn't quite see panning out that way.
Just some poor fielding by both sides. 7 drop catches. Now, if Travis is caught in the second innings, we were 5 for 108, so we're effectively 5 for 98. It's game on.
Yep.
Travis and Bo Webster and then Alex Carey set him 300. Anything you're right on that wicket, that'll be too many. And sure enough, they then just fell away. Like Green dropped the catch, and then the guy played the paddle.
Yep.
All of a sudden, 2 for 45 became 5 for 50. And they just fell away.
Is Steve Smith a realistic chance of getting back for the second test?
Yeah, I think so. He actually, again, I found it interesting. He's got a home in New York, so he went home. He went to New York for the first test. So I think he's 50-50. But again, with that, I'm sorry, at commentary level, they're doing jobs I'd kill for. Now, there's Adam White and SEN commentating, and they're going, I wonder if this will be the last over of the day on the day. And I'm thinking, no, guys, they're 7 for. The rule is 7 for you request the extra half hour as the visiting.
Even I know that, and I'm not a cricket nuffy.
And there's the guy. Neither of the commentators knew that. And I'm sitting there dumbfounded. I dropped my son at work. So it's good to have something to listen to while I'm driving on a Saturday morning.
Absolutely.
I'm just thinking, for goodness sake, how don't you even know that? And as you said, you're not a cricket nut.
And I knew that once you get to 7 and you get close to that half an hour mark, you can request that extra half an hour. Absolutely crazy. I did throw out Steve Smith there. Who do you see sort of coming out of that lineup?
Inglis will go out. It'll be
really?
1 for 1. Yep.
So no shuffling of the order?
No.
No Marnus?
No, I don't think so. I reckon they'll stick with Green for a while here. I would have loved with Marnus to go, right, Marnus, go back and play for Glenmorgan for a while. That's what I would have loved to.
Well, he would have got runs if he'd gone there.
Shit, yeah. But to do that, get him back. Look, I'll give him his due. He would have he came on in subfield and got a run out.
Yep, and it was a beauty too.
Yeah, just full of beans, and that's Marnus. He's honestly.
Yep.
He's
like a kid in candy store.
Yeah, he's ants in his pants, that sort of line and all that. That's Marnus as a person. He doesn't shut up.
Yep.
He makes me look like Marcel Marceau, mate. So, yeah.
Okay, so just one change, Inglis out and
that's
Smith
what I reckon
in.
it'll be.
Okay, very interesting.
If Smith comes up.
What are your thoughts on Constas?
I think he's got a long way to go. I reckon they messed him around. Look, they picked him, and we should always remember his junior record is fantastic.
Yep.
He's then runs, but probably not quite enough at Shield level against enough states before he got picked.
Yep.
Yes, he got 200s against South Australia. Kez dropped him a sitter in the second innings when he was on naught too. Yep. So I thought he was a bit like, and they sort of then picked him when he'd made a 60 for Sydney Thunder. Mm-hmm. Well, let's go out and play Boomer a different way. Now, it worked.
Yep.
But I'm worried, have they scrambled him forever sort of thing? And I just want to see him bat.
For periods of time?
And at the moment, he's hitting across his front pad. Well, he wasn't doing that as a kid, so I'm just worried that his brain's become scrambled.
Yep. And that's the difference between today's cricket and yesterday's cricket, in that there's so much 2020 and these players are playing so much cricket that they need to switch between formats so often that they just don't settle down into any type of rhythm.
It's okay. There's quite a few Australians playing English county cricket. So people like Wes Ago, we've had on the shows playing for Kent. So I'm following Wes a bit. Unfortunately, he's batting better than he's bowling at the moment in that. But so Chris Green, mainly from 2020 cricket, we've seen him. He's played a bit of Shield cricket for New South Wales. He made 100 for Lancashire, batting 8 or 9.
Yep.
Daniel Hughes, I haven't checked what he ended up with. He was on 151 not out in one of those batathons.
Yep.
And I'll have a look at that later. But so there's some guys playing there, so I'm following a little bit. But there's also a lot of the guys are playing in the American 2020 league at the moment. Jake Fraser-McGurk, Glenn Maxwell, Daniel Sams. Jeez, there's a few others.
Yep. And look, good on them for obviously looking at their payday.
Oh, look, it gives me someone to follow.
Exactly right. Some interesting conditions over in England at the moment with 30, 32 degrees at the moment. Slightly different to our 32s. We think sometimes 32, that's all right, but slightly different to ours here. But
it's also they're not used to it.
They're not used to it, exactly right. Let's talk Australia v the West Indies, obviously playing July 3 to 8 at National Cricket Stadium there. Quick tip.
I'll go Australia.
Australia as well for me there. All right, let's move on to the SANFL. VALE to Ian Day, one of the famous voices of the SANFL, but obviously he's best known for kicking the sealer for South Adelaide in their only premiership in 64.
Yep. And look, fantastic commentator. Lucky enough that I was actually at Nord Oval when his son Tim, who then went to work in America with the physio field, but with baseball as well, hit the winning run for South Australia in the Claxton Shield one night. And Ian, I was probably about this far away from Ian that night as well.
Would have been proud as punch.
Oh, it was great. It was awesome. Ian, I think for mine, Ian Day and Peter Marker together are my best ever part. You know, don't worry, I love Wally May, and you know, I was bitterly disappointed I wasn't asked to compare the Nord 75 show last Thursday night because I could have quoted the whole grand final of commentary. You know, and had some fun with that.
But Peter Marker and Ian Day were the two
brilliant
voices, I suppose, of SANFL, and then Bruce McAvaney sort of did a little bit, and then Malcolm Blight did a little bit, and there was
Bruce and Sandy Roberts were very good.
Exactly right.
But if I'm said, I've got Day and Marker as my number one.
Absolutely. So condolences there go to the family, but certainly a rich history within the SANFL. All right, let's talk some of the games here, mate. Sturt currently sitting on top of the table, undefeated. 11 from 11. At the moment, it's them and whoever else wants to go with them. But
just last week was incredible. I think it was half-time or just after half-time, talking to Sodas after the game on Saturday.
Yes.
And it was 108 points to 2.
Yep.
Just incredible. Now, Jeff Boycott would have been proud of being none for 2 at lunch.
Yes.
You got to see we've got away to a start. Just incredible.
And yet, Woodville West Torrens are sitting 4th on the table. So there is a real disparity between the top 3 and the rest of the competition at the moment. But Nord were competitive with Glenelg once again, one of the top teams. But they haven't got that class, have they?
No. We fall away at the bottom end. Our last few picked aren't good enough.
Yep.
And that really showed on Saturday. But I've got to say, that is as poor an umpiring as I've ever seen at SANFL level. Ridiculously technical.
Yep.
And I've got to say, and I will let Berkey know, it's good guy umpiring, the free kick against Tom Donnelly when he made full contact with the ball, spoiled it, and the ball went at least 20 metres out of bounds. Free kick paid against him when Hosey then made contact with him in the play afterwards. I was running a few minutes late tonight because I went to Jeff Wilson's place because I couldn't get it. I couldn't get it working on my iPad. I don't know why, but went and had a look there. And I thought at the time that's up there with the worst decisions I've ever seen.
Yep.
Now I've watched it again.
You're doubling down.
Yeah, it is. It is a terrible decision. It was a guess, and it was an appalling decision. There was another one paid to McBean. He just dropped the mark. Let guys compete, for goodness sake. Let players decide the results. Now, look, umpiring, they've made it way too hard. Look, they were poor. The umpiring was poor on Saturday. Both sides said that afterwards, upstairs with the Glenelg guys afterwards. Both sides were just so pissed off at how technical it had been. Yep. So I'm not saying it cost Nord the game. I thought Glenelg were the better side.
Yep.
But out of that.
It was always going to be a tough ask.
But the instructions given to them are so wrong.
Yep.
And so I actually feel sorry for the umpires.
So do they need to peel that back?
Oh, massively.
And does that have to come from the AFL level all the way down?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes.
I'm glad you've said that.
Yes. an effing yes.
Gotcha. All right, South Adelaide getting up over Port Adelaide. That was a little bit of a surprise.
It was a surprise, and
well done.
Yeah, look, because South were pretty average against Nord the week before, and so good on them. They then kept at it and got a good result.
Absolutely.
Against the Port side, which is stronger now because of the mid-season draft.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Crazy. Adelaide getting up over North Adelaide there reasonably comfortably. Nord, I did watch, obviously, a little bit of the Nord Tigers game, a bit like you. I thought that Nord, their effort, you couldn't question it. Same against Sturt a few weeks ago. The effort was there. Just a few little things didn't quite go their way.
I was glad that the commentators had the oomph to say the free kick against Donnelly was a disgrace at the time as well.
Yep. Central's getting up over West Adelaide, and as we've already mentioned, Sturt getting up over Woodville West Torrens. All right, mate, let's talk this week's games. Doesn't get any easier for West Adelaide against Glenelg.
Yeah, Glenelg.
Glenelg for me. Sturt v the Roosters.
Sturt
for me. Panthers v the Bulldogs.
I'll still go the Bulldogs. It'll be interesting with the Dyson Sharp play, whether Centrals bring some kids straight in from there. It'll be because they had a few, so it'll be interesting to see what they do this week.
All right, Bulldogs for me. The Crows v the Eagles out at Adelaide Oval, actually, as a curtain raiser.
I think they're playing at 11:15, actually.
That's correct. You're right on the money there, mate.
I'll go the Crows.
And Port Adelaide v Nord at Alberton, Sunday, 1:10.
Yeah, Port will have their guys come back from Darwin who miss out, so they will be at full strength. So, and again, out of this, I actually don't get, for mine, that game should be on a Saturday this week. I don't see why. Sunday, they're competing against the Crows game.
Yep.
So it's more done that the Port guys can come back from there. I think that's a bit overboard on that one. I think that should have been a Saturday.
Need to be a little bit more organised there from the SANFL point of view. All right, last one, mate. The netball there. Again, the Thunderbirds just keep themselves in the hunt. They are in the 4, but only by percentage. They're having to do it the hard way, aren't they?
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, and huge if they make it, no one's going to want to play them. So.
Exactly right. It's going to be an interesting watch over the next couple of weeks. I believe that they're playing home on, Sunday, the 29th of June against, no, that wouldn't be right. They're playing...
We'd be able to predict the winner.
Well, it's the Mavericks at the Entertainment Centre on the 5th of July. Sorry, I just had the wrong screen up there. So well done to the Thunderbirds and best of luck. All right, mate, coming up.
I was thinking the I Dream a Genie episode there.
You're right there. We've got Jake Lehmann Part 1 coming up.
Yeah, enjoyable.
Absolutely, and Greg Edwards Part 1 after we finished off with Keith Thomas.
And JC.
You're listening to the Game On Podcast. We'll be right back after this short break.
Looking to buy or sell your home anywhere in Adelaide, from the hills to the sea? Meet Gary KRIEVS, your dedicated local agent from OUWENS CASSERLY Real Estate. With unparalleled knowledge of Adelaide's housing market and a commitment to exceptional service, Gary ensures a smooth and stress-free experience for all your real estate needs. Trust the expert, trust Gary KRIEVS at OUWENS CASSERLY Real Estate. Your next dream home awaits. Contact Gary today on 0422 071 317 or on email garyk@ocre.com.au. And for more listings, please visit owenscasserly.com.au. Make it happen.
Flashbacks.
Talor provides the run, kicks inside 50, McGovern, what a player.
What a mark, Bruce, what a mark, and he goes to Vardy straight away. They need to keep going quickly, 2:29 remaining. Ryan with a big mark. Ryan, what about that? He plays on, ball to Sheeds, too long, Maynard can't get there. Sheed, did he play on? Did he take a step?
A clever shepherd from Rioli. Well, that's the question. Was Maynard blocked out of that one? Probably was.
If he kicks the goal, I think West Coast can win the grand final. 2 minutes and just under. Massive. Sheed from the boundary. Needs to be inch perfect. He is. He's got the most impossible goal. Unbelievable, the most acute angling footy. And Sheed has kicked a remarkable grand final goal.
Jeremy McGovern, huge at the other end. He started it all. Flying Ryan with a fantastic grab. The aerial display by all players today has been superb. Was it a block? Oh, it probably was. It was. It doesn't matter. Sheeds nailed
Extra
it. It's the biggest.
time. Big finish.
All right, mate. Obviously, Dom Sheed, they're retiring from the game of AFL football, and congratulations, obviously, go to him on kicking that fantastic
Oh, it was
goal.
a great goal. I'll always say at the start of that, though, that it was selfish for Pies player. God.
The defender?
Yeah, not to compete with McGovern, who he was going for the injured Collingwood player at the moment.
Not Thuggery.
Thuggery, yeah.
Yep.
Thuggery there.
And
that he
speaking
should
of
have
Thuggery, he
competed.
looks like he's got a concussion
Concussion,
today
yeah,
at
training,
practice.
yeah. Thuggery should have competed with McGovern there, not run out the back trying to be the hero with the sealer.
Yep. So well done there, obviously, to Dom Sheed. And that grand final,
Was
West
a great
Coast
game.
were well and truly out of it at one stage, and then Collingwood were out of it, and then all of a sudden it came down to that last play, basically.
Yeah, it was.
Absolute beauty.
I've had a chat to Ed Raish. He's very quiet and all that. Let's just say that Andrew's wife and James's mum wasn't happy with the lack of game time James got.
Yep.
May have made the feelings well known.
Well known. There you go.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, let's move on to the AFLW. We did talk about it just briefly last week that their superstar vows to leave no stone unturned in that Matty Clark is going to have his last year. Any sort of feeling on what the next coach is going to come from or where it's going to...
Not yet.
No, not yet.
Not yet.
It's going to be an interesting watch for Adelaide because they have had a successful program. Who are the teams that we should be looking out for that can contend, or is it going to be the same old suspects for a little while?
I think North Melbourne will still be the team to beat. I think they've recruited pretty well again.
Yep.
I am looking forward to you watching young Rashid play for Adelaide. I rate her very highly, and I can't believe Adelaide managed to pull that off.
Yep, they snagged an absolute
very
beauty,
clever
for sure.
behind the scenes.
They were indeed. All right, we'll keep a bit of an eye on that. All right, the NBA, even though that the finals are all finished, 4 Australians were drafted in the recent NBA draft. Does this lay claim to the NBL being the second best competition in the world?
It's not like they'd played much NBL, though. It's not. I reckon it's a bit hard of a stretch.
Yeah, because they are playing college ball.
College ball, yeah. One of them was recruited totally from college ball. I think one had played a bit of NBA. I think it might have been 2 from college ball. So our depths now, Australia should be becoming very competitive internationally.
Now, this is what I was going to say. Do we see medals or coloured medals coming our way in these big tournaments? It's going to be very interesting. Let's talk Adelaide 36ers. Obviously, we haven't talked too much since some of their recruits that have come in. They've got some big personalities to fill in that one team.
Which
How
can
do you
always be interesting in basketball.
This is what I ask, is that can it work? Can it work?
We just got to... You can't say any more than wait and see on that one.
It's going to be an interesting watch.
Could
Obviously,
be an interesting dressing room.
Exactly right. Should be good. All right, State of Origin. Let's talk NRL. Game 3 should be an absolute humdinger.
Jesus, some players gone down injured out of both sides and all that. Yeah, so...
Does it open up opportunities for players that might have been on fringe of national selection?
Definitely. All of a sudden, some player 3 weeks ago is probably no chance. All of a sudden now is a huge chance.
Yep.
So, yeah.
And we all know that they bleed maroon or bleed blue, depending on which team. So it's going to be an interesting Game 3, that's for sure, coming up. In-season trading is obviously in the NRL. What about the AFL? Can we see it working in the AFL?
I'd rather have that than the mid-season draft taking players out of the SANFL. Like, I hate it. I'd much rather just have bigger squads to start with if you're thinking you're going to reach that stage.
Yep.
And look, with Essendon this year, the poor, that guy's going down. It was just crazy and just almost.
Well, they lost 3 in their bye weekend.
It was but just long term losing guys for the year. So that's out of that. So I don't mind bigger lists, but not during the season. Personally.
Is it a case of protecting certain players from that trading period, so that way the strong doesn't get stronger and the weak get weaker?
Well, I just still think it's crazy that you've got what's meant to be a professional competition, the second competition, and all that, and yet we're regarded totally as a feeder league, and all of a sudden one of your opponents gets 3 very good players from other teams in that competition.
Yes.
It's crazy.
It is.
It's
you almost need to go back to the way it was. All right, mate, let's finish off with tennis. 7 Aussies in action in day 1.
Yeah.
Only one of them got through, Jordan Thompson, that is.
And after being 2 sets to love down, too.
Yep, so he did it the hard way there. There are 9 Aussies in action in day 2. A lot of carnage, obviously, in day 1, and a few seeds almost went out as well. But the Heat is playing a rollover in England.
Popperin was the most disappointing one, and I did listen to Phillips, I'm trying to think of his first name, on SEN on the way here.
Brenton Phillips.
Yeah, Brenton, and he wasn't
from the first serve.
Yeah, he wasn't complimentary of Popperin's lack of fights. That he almost put it in the too hard basket. Now, an Australian, surely the Heat should favour us. So a bit disappointing, man.
Congratulations go to Maya Joint, who obviously won at Eastbourne. Hasn't played in too many main draw events.
Yeah, well done to Smoker.
Absolutely, but she's up there. I like that. That's an absolute beauty. She obviously is one of the up-and-coming juniors, I think, scoring from 2,164 2 years ago now to in the top 50 in the world. She's got a bright future, and this is probably the legacy that's being left a little bit from Ash Barty.
You'd hope so. Yeah,
exactly
definitely.
Right. Well done there. We'll follow Wimbledon a little bit more closely next week. Obviously, we're recording a little bit earlier this week. We'll have some results, and hopefully there's a couple of Australians that are still in the main draws.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
Alex Dimener's fiance won at least.
Katie Boulder.
The British. So at least that's... We'll claim her anyway.
Yeah, exactly right. A bit like Aussie Kim.
Yep.
All right, mate, we better wind things up there. We'll leave the good, the bad, the ugly. I think we've covered plenty tonight.
I think I've covered what I thought the bad and ugly were, yes.
And we better wind things up there.
Football club.
Like, rate, subscribe, pass it on. We promise to do better next week. And until then, thanks, mate.
In this crazy world we live in, we all need the distraction. Enjoying the show? Like, rate, and subscribe. Hook up and connect with us on social media at Sportscast SA. We'll see you next time on Game On.